Okay. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Minutes Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weaver, and I'm here with my other host,
Nate Bird. Happy to be on the show as always.
Yes, what a wonderful day it is. And we have a wonderful guest, a friend of both me and Nate's, someone that we met at school, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Adhieu Arok, Ada, and I grew up most of my life in Utah, but I was born and raised in Kenya, a refugee camp. Then I moved to Utah as a refugee when I was 8, almost 9, and basically lived in Utah since. I went to BYU. And then after I graduated, I got married and I moved to Boise. So now I live in Boise.
Yes. Hey, I heard Boise is getting kind of popping up there. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's okay.
What do you, oh, no, not the same.
I mean, it's literally just like Utah. It's like a smaller version, like demographic wise, the same people.
Oh, okay.
The same, like geographically looks the same too. So it really just feels like I moved to like a different city in Utah. But, but I think it's a little better actually because the people there are more genuine. I feel like Utah has a very not so genuine undertone with when you like meet people. But people there are like, you know what I mean? They're just more genuine.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's like Utah, but more genuine people.
Like normal white people, you know?
Okay.
Normal white people in Idaho?
Yeah.
Right.
No offense to Idaho people up here.
But
I just have met some interesting people in Idaho, but I was on the other side of the state. Like Pocatello, Idaho Falls side. That's what I say, it is like, different. Yeah.
It's kind of like the Salt Lake City
exactly
of Idaho.
Okay.
I'm trying to put this in terms I can understand.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nate, you want to start us off or you want me to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've known you for a minute. I feel like we first met like way back during our freshman year.
Yeah, 2014.
2014. That's what I remember, like seeing you around. I was like, hey, another Black person.
No,
I remember like introducing myself, and then we kind of like all got involved with BSU and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But before we kind of get into your BYU experience, what was it like, growing up in a refugee camp in Kenya? Kind of tell us about that experience, and then talk about like the culture shock that came like from moving to Utah.
Yeah.
And of all places to move, like
right.
Yeah. Just
like not to the East Coast, not to the West Coast, but to Utah. Like that's a huge difference. So kind of talk about that.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, so I was born and raised in a refugee camp in Kenya called Kakuma. So my family's from South Sudan, but there was a civil war there. So a lot of people had to leave. There's a lot of displacement. And when people left, they went to Egypt, they went to Ethiopia, they went to Kenya, like me, they went to Uganda. And after that, some of them moved to like abroad, to like Australia, obviously the US, Canada, other places. But when I was growing up in Kakuma, life there was like normal, but I didn't know that I was living in poverty until I moved abroad. But when I was there, I was, like just happy. Like everybody, looked like me. Everybody had the same culture. We obviously were struggling, but when you're young, you don't know what the world is. So you think this is everybody's life, And then my mom, she worked for the UN. And when she was working for the UN, because she speaks like multiple languages and she spoke English, which was very valuable because they needed somebody to translate people's stories. So my mom was translating people's stories. And then basically the people who had the worst, which is, I don't know how they quantify like what's worse, like stories got to go abroad, those who maybe like had no family and all those stuff. So while my mom was helping them, somebody asked her like, oh, why don't you go to America with your family? And she was like, well, my family, our situation is not too bad. Like my husband is still alive. She lost 6 siblings. Wow. She was the oldest out of 10.
Oh
she lost 6 siblings, her father, so many people. So she saw terrible things. She was pregnant with me and she walked, not joking, walked from South Sudan to Ethiopia to Kenya.
Wow.
3 countries.
How far is that?
I don't know the miles.
Okay, I'm going to look it up.
We should look it up because just think about that. 3 countries.
Yeah, that is a lot.
That's a lot. And she said, while she was walking with thousands of other refugees, people really don't understand like how hard it is to come to the US and they treat refugees so bad, but they don't know like what they came from.
Literally.
And the background checks that they had to get to be able to come abroad. It's not like they just like, oh, you just come abroad, so she saw a lot of people die. She said that she saw people be eaten by wild animals when they were crossing rivers. People were eaten by crocodiles. And unfortunately, she also lost my older brother, who would have been my older brother before I was born during the war, because they were bombed and then he got sick from, the bombing, and then he like passed away like a few months before I was born. So my name is pronounced Adhieu, which means to cry, or like to cry literally, and also like to give to God, because once my brother passed away, I was born a few months after. So my name was basically like, they were mourning him. So that's what Adhieu means. And then, well, I was living in a refugee camp. Like I said, I was going to school. Like we lived in like mud houses. Our school is made out of mud, and there'd be like, 150 kids to like one teacher, and it was very chaotic, and it was so fun. I loved it. And I didn't really know what, race was or anything, because everybody looked like me. There was other ethnicities, and people really don't understand how diverse Africans are. Like there was Ethiopians and Eritreans and Somalians and Kenyans and, Ugandans, and we all look different, we just have melanin, but we all have very distinct features. So we knew like, there was other like ethnicities, but like, I don't really know, like there was like other races that exist, And I do remember my first time ever seeing a white person, like in the refugee camp. They were probably working for the UN, and I was scared, like, because it's just something so different,
Right.
And that's why sometimes when like I see little white kids, sometimes they first see me because I'm very dark and tall, like they sometimes be scared, and I was like, I know what that feels like because you've never seen that before, So it's like, okay, I get that when you're like young, And I remember I just like ran away, and like we would go touch them, which now I think is so weird, but back then we thought it was so funny, And then once my family was lucky enough to come to the US, we're actually supposed to go to Boston. But my uncle was already living here. He came as a lost boy. So the lost boys and girls of South Sudan, a lot of these young boys and girls, their fathers were killed, and then the boys were kind of sent off to be child soldiers. A lot of them escaped. So a lot of them have no parents, like no mom, dad, because their mom probably died while escaping. Their dads were killed in front of them. So my uncle was one of them, and he had come to the US before us. So when we came, he was already living in Utah, and we were supposed to go to Boston, and we were so excited because we're like, yes,
Boston.
We know Boston.
I love Boston.
Yeah,
and nobody ever heard of Utah.
And there's a lot of immigrants in Boston too, actually. So that's like awesome.
And sometimes I'm just like, did I get robbed?
No,
it's fine.
Sorry, I looked it up, and it looks like it's about 1,200 kilometers, or like 750 miles.
Oh my gosh!
From South Sudan to Kenya.
Kenya, but like she also went to Ethiopia, so that'd be probably times that by 2.
Further, right?
So like that's a lot, and she has children. She has one on her back, she's holding one's hand, and she was pregnant with me. Which like. After being pregnant last year, I don't know how she did that. Like that was already so uncomfortable, and I lived like, a very comfortable life. But that's crazy. Thanks for looking that up though. And we were supposed to go to Boston. My uncle called us and was like, hey, I feel like you guys should come to Utah. Like I just have this feeling it's a good place to raise your family, and we're already like on our way. And he called the UN, and then they like changed our route. Like we landed in Boston. I remember seeing the Boston skyline.
Oh my god!
We were so happy. Our first time in a hotel, we were like clicking the lights, like turning them on and off, because we're like, oh my god! Like it was like we'll go to the bathroom and just like open the water in the sink and stuff, because it was just like a very nice hotel that even anyone here in the US would probably be like impressed by it.
Right.
But when you're coming from a refugee camp, it's like even more like because you're living with like the bare necessities, and now you're like, whoa. And we're like, is this what America's going to be like? It was not. Then we moved to Utah, and that's where like most of my childhood was here. Like I grew up literally I've lived in Murray, I've lived in Crownwood Heights, we now live in West Valley, we've lived in Salt Lake, we moved on a lot. So like I know this place very well. And life I remember my first time going to school. So I just moved to the US. I went to school my first day, and I remember like getting so overwhelmed at recess because there was so many like little white kids just staring at me, and I was literally the only one in my grade, like in my class that was Black. And I think my brothers, there was very, very like there was no diversity. There was like all white kids. I think there was like one mixed girl that was in my class, and then there was me, hyper visible because I'm very dark, and everybody like they were generally just kids are kids. They just want to come say hi.
Curious,
they're like, hi, like, where are you from? And I don't speak English. I was just overwhelmed. And I was just like,
wow.
I just started crying. I remember that vividly. And the teacher had to come and be like, okay, let's give her some space. Like, leave her alone.
Like, I can just see the white teacher being like, okay, now back up. Give her some space,
like,
y'all, please.
Literally, like, I had just been, because we came in March. So I just been in the US for maybe like a week or less. And I'm ready to go to school. And we had to like ride the bus on our own. I remember being scared. So everything looked the same. Everybody looked the same. Like, you know how other races always think like other races all look the same?
Yeah.
I thought that for a very long time because I came from a place where there was no one else but Black people.
Yeah.
And then I came here and I was just like, why do all white people look the same? And it took like, and then some people, like my friends would describe their friend and say, oh, the girl with the blue eyes and the blonde hair. I'm like, that's everybody.
That's everybody.
Like, I honestly was like, I didn't even like remember people's eye colors. That's a feature that white people remember often. Like they'll be like, oh, that person has hazel eyes. That person has blue eyes. And that's stuff that we never like, we didn't describe people that way. We described people differently than the way they did. So like, I had to start paying attention to like, that one was brunette, but like not like super brunette. They're like, you know, like they had a weird like.
You're trying to,
yeah. And I was just like, what? Like
now that you mention it, that's actually so true. I don't even like white people with like blue eyes. Like I don't. The only time I remember is like, sorry, light skinned people with green eyes. Those are the only eye colors I remember. You're like, you know, that's like the Black people's version of eye colors that you remember. You know what I mean?
But I feel like I usually identify people through like personality traits.
Right. Yes.
But like here they like. Yeah, it was eye color was number one. Like, oh, they have blue or green or hazel or brown, you know, and then the next would be hair color. They're like a dirty blonde hair. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, to me,
or like I remember when I heard strawberry blonde for the first time. I was in high school and I'm like,
what is that?
Oh shit, we got variations of this. I was like,
right. And then like the girl with the highlights. I'm like, what is that? So like it was kind of weird. Like I had to like switch my brain, you know, and for the longest time I was thinking my native language Dinka, and then I remember like when I started thinking English and like things started making sense. It took a couple of years, and then like I don't know, like I just saw the world differently from what I saw before. Like it's so interesting what the culture that you're brought up will like kind of like shape the way you see the world. And my worldview like was so different from my peers for like the longest time until like maybe middle school that I just saw everything. Like I didn't see things the way they did, you know? And then finally like it kind of like flipped because now I've been in the US longer than I was back home. And then now I was seeing things like the way my peers see it. But I would go home, my mom would not see things the way I saw it. So it was like a lot of like cultural differences. Like you mentioned culture shock it was huge in the beginning. I hated the food, like cheese. Like, why is cheese in everything? I was just like, it was so gross to me. Like, we're just like, what? Ew. Like, we eat a lot of like stews and like a lot of spices. And here they're like giving us ham and cheese sandwiches. And I was just like, I'm not eating that. Like, what is that? Like, it was very different, I guess. But like, that was basically my upbringing. And and like, obviously, I was very hyper visible because everybody was white because I live in Utah. Like 95% of my school would be white, and then like some Hispanics and like few Black kids. And a lot of the Black kids were either adopted or like mixed race, and they were scared of other Black people. And I never understood that. Like they would avoid me like purposely. So like I had to be friends with the white kids because like those were the ones who want to be friends with me. Yeah. Which was so weird to me because I was like, wait, like, but we, you know, we have something in common. We have melanin, like, you know, like we could, you know. It wasn't until I was older.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though. Like the Black kids here themselves, and even less growing up. Now, I feel like it's a little better because there's more Black people and people are more purposeful about the Black community here in Utah and unifying. But I bet growing up, it was not that way. It was not and that two, way. If Black kids, based on my experience with Black children who didn't grow up around other Black children, sometimes they don't know how to act around other Black kids, and it's fearful for them. It's just
they were scared.
Yeah, it's just scared, and so I can imagine that was the way for Black children in Utah, especially you coming from like, this is not what I'm used to. Why are you acting like this?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was strange for me for sure. So I feel like growing up, like I remember there was even a time that I changed my name to Addie, which I cringe. Ooh, cringe. When I was in 6th grade, because nobody can pronounce Adhieu, and I was already so different. And I was like, I just want a white name so I can just like fit in, you know? A lot of immigrants do that. And I remember changing my name to Addie. I was like telling people, like, you can call me Addie. I mean, on my school like records was still my name, and I would write my name like on my paper as my name, but like I wanted my friends to call me that. And until this day, some people from high school and from middle school still call me that, and I cringe, and I'm just like, don't call me that anymore. But like from 6th grade, you just want to fit in.
Yeah,
that's all you want.
Makes sense.
And when you're like
a formative time,
very dark and look like nobody, you're taller than most people, you're darker than everyone literally in the room, you just feel so different, you know. Your hair is different, like, and a lot of the few Black kids there, like, you know, like they would have like straight weaves or like straighten their hair, but like I always had African hairstyles, braids, cornrows, like, you know, like now it's becoming a thing. That was like just normal for me growing up. So it was, everybody was always touching my hair because it was before, you know, braids became cool now, like the last couple of years.
No,
you know?
I know what
like
you're talking about. Yeah.
Like very African hairstyles and like, you know, very Black hairstyles, and people just were like, oh my gosh, your hair is so cool. They're always touching it. And it was just like, now that I look back, I was just like, wow, like there. And I also experienced a lot of colorism. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, talk about
that. Share about
the colorism is off the wall. Like, and the sad thing is, it's from other Black people. They were the most colorist. You get racism from white people,
100%.
Colorism from Black people. You can't win.
Yes, that's so true. Because I remember when I came home from my mission. This is really random. I realized my whole like 18 months that I was there around like white missionaries, I never, like, no one made comments about like my skin color. Right. And then immediately coming back to BYU and being around the Black community, like someone commented on it. And then I was like, you know what? I have not thought about this for 18 months. Right. Like I have not realized it. And then that was just like my aha moment of like, wow, this is our issue. Oh, white people have racism, Black people have colorism.
It's colorism.
Yeah.
And
it's a branch of racism, but
yes.
Could you just kind of like define colorism?
For the listeners. Yes.
Yeah. So basically colorism is when people of lighter complexions think that they have more power or are more beautiful or more desired or better than people with darker complexions in the Black and brown communities. Basically, it's not, colorism is not only in the Black community, it's also like in Hispanic communities. It's in Asian communities.
It's rooted in anti-Blackness overall.
The closer to white you are, the better you are.
And even if you're just a shade lighter than someone, they think all of a sudden that they're better than you, like, and like more beautiful than you. And like that was always weird for me because like sometimes I would be definitely prettier than some of the lighter skinned girls. Yeah. And that doesn't matter though, because I'm dark. So like that's what like that overpowers everything else. Like if you have beautiful features or you're like very intelligent, once you're dark, you're dumb, you're ugly, you're undesirable. And it just always blew my mind that people were that fixated on colorism. Like it's something that I definitely struggle with. Like I would get it rarely from white people. It's just racism because they're like, oh, we're all Black. And they will say dumb things like they'll see a person Rachel's color, you know, like 5 shades, and they're like, is that your dad? No, Becky.
Be so for real. Like, come on now. Like, why you literally
had
like,
somebody
they don't
ask
understand
me that.
color. They're not like colorism doesn't register for them because they do stuff like that. That you're like, I was confused with another Black person who I thought I'm like they're much lighter than me. I don't know why you confused us. Like that shocked me as a Black person. Like I'm like what? Yeah, they don't see it. I don't know.
And I was just like what? Like, and I kind of like that because like they just saw me like I don't know. It's weird, like processing it because I'm like, okay, I kind of like that they don't like see me as like they know I'm darker than you. They could probably see that, but they don't recognize it. They just see us as Black. So I'm like, okay, at least I'm just under one category now,
right,
and I'm not like, and then like when you're in the Black community, it's like there's rankings, and I'm the bottom of the food chain. Like I'm very dark, and Sudanese people struggle with this because we are the darkest people in the world. Like. Fact. That's a fact. And we have very distinct features. Not only are we the darkest, we're tall, we're very skinny. So like we have very distinct features that like you can just spot us. Like even if we're among Black people, like you can just look at me and be like, that girl is different Black, And I've gotten called like the nastiest things by other Black people that I'm just like, it's and even Africans too. Like it's really sad. Like they be like, oh, like you're too dark. Like I've been told so many times to lighten my skin, to use creams.
Really?
To the point I almost did when I was young. And now I'm just like, thank God. Like I was
Yeah.
that close, like in middle school or something, after just getting sick of being always called like, you're too dark, even by other Sudanese people who might just be like a little bit like a normal brown like color. I'm just like, dude, you're still dark, like, you know, but because I'm darker than them, like, just like lighten your skin, like just use like cream and like, you know, like the like lightening cream, it's a big industry in Africa and like other parts of the world. Like it's crazy. Like I was just in Nigeria, you know, last month, and it's everywhere. And like you go to any African store, there's a whole shelf of just like lightening cream, and the girls on it are very like, they look fake like, they don't even look like a normal
like
color. Yeah. I'm just like, nobody looks like that.
And even like when like I've seen people after like skin lightening or bleaching, and it doesn't look like normal, like a healthy skin color. Like it looks like a like very muted, like almost a little sickly. Which is funny actually, because that's how I feel like about like lighter people. Like I feel like darker people look like the most healthiest. Like the skin just looks good. Like the skin just looks better. I'm just being honest. It really does. And so and that's something I've seen, because I know people who have lightened and like you can just tell, and it does make me sad, because I'm like,
it does make me sad too.
It's just like, oh, like your skin was so beautiful,
right? Like it was literally perfect. And then you said like
people spray tan to get the type of depth that comes from like really dark melanin
and that's
skin,
the thing.
And how pigmented it is. Like people are literally paying for that.
You can't even buy that though. You can't buy melanin. Like you can like bleach your skin, but you can never like get dark enough to like have melanin. Like you just it's such a valuable thing that I don't understand why some people. No, I mean, I do understand. After you've been told for hundreds of years that blackness is bad and undesirable, I can see why somebody would, you know, not want to associate with blackness. But to me, it breaks my heart, because I'm just like, how do we not see how beautiful we are? Like, they know how beautiful. That's why they tried so hard to bring us down, because like you always try to bring down something that you can't have. White people can never be black, so they created white supremacy, racism, colorism, just to bring down what they know it's great. Like genetically, we are like, I don't know what to say, but genetically we do have better genes. Like we have dominant genes. I can say that. That's a fact. Like, you know, darker skin is dominant, darker hair, darker eyes are dominant. You know, like lighter, like hair, eyes is recessive. So it's like,
it is.
Obviously like we started, you know, all humans came from Africa. So like we're all started dark and then like, you know, evolved depending on where you live environmentally. And I don't want to be the type to say like, you know, like this race is better than that race, because I think that's ridiculous. We're all, you know, people, but there are genes that are like naturally just better, you know.
And we tend to think of white people as the majority, and we call, you know, people of color minorities.
No.
But I once saw it on Instagram where it's like, I'm going to stop calling myself a minority and start referring to myself as a global majority. And I was like,
globally,
the global majority.
Definitely.
The global majority. What it is.
Globally.
Like I think what 10% of the world's population is white.
Because it's recessive. Like, there's not very, and you see it too when white people marry other races. Their kids tend to look more like the other race, you know, like they tend to have like darker skin or darker eyes or whatever the other like the race.
More like I don't want to say ethnic, but just the person who's more like a person of color has more melanin. Dominant. Those features are typically more prominent.
Like those genes tend to come through more in the features of the children.
Yeah,
you know?
and
not
like,
always, but most of the time.
Most of the time, exactly. Like probably 75% of the time, like that would happen. But so I just think it's crazy. But like it makes sense why people think white people are the majority, because they have hidden like blackness and like made like whiteness be like in the front line of everything, you know, like television wise, like that makes a big difference. When all you're seeing on TV is white people, you're gonna think like, oh, most of the world is white. Like I thought that when I was young, because I never saw anybody in my skin tone. So I was like, oh, there's not like everybody, I guess everybody's white, you know, but that's not true. Again, I feel like they were really just working so hard to like
and consider themselves as well.
Superior.
Something that I think is interesting is just always the conversation of like white people feeling like excluded now with what's happening now in terms of things becoming more representative and more diverse. I think it's funny because I'm like, no, we're just doing what you did. Like in the most respectful way. Like we want things to reflect us. the same way that you guys wanted things to reflect y'all. Like,
and also
you
be
had
more
your
realistic.
time.
Be more realistic too.
Yeah. Like you had your time. Now it's time for other things to come forward.
Yeah. And I think that's like historically, that's usually what happens. Like the people who are dominating, and people think that white people have been in power for so long, which they kind of have. But before that, they were like the Egyptians were way ahead of them, like the Europeans. And before that, like
the Ethiopians and the Moors,
like we had our time in the past, and then like when it was their turn to like to dominate, they took it too far. I feel like it just went way too far, and I think that's the only difference. And now people think that white people have been in power for so long. It's only been 400 years. And let's remember, humans have been alive for more than 400 years, right? Like they just, before that, they were very behind. Yeah. Like,
I mean, Africa is the cradle of civilization.
Yeah.
Like that's where things began, and that's where everything spread out.
And it's crazy because they hit it so well, like so well that to the point that they would give aliens credits for the pyramids in Egypt over Black people, because they could not fathom that Black people were smarter than them and created better civilizations. So they're like, it must have been aliens that came and did this and then left. I read that in one of the books I read called They Came Before Columbus. It's a brilliant book. And I just remember, like, I literally laughed out loud.
Just have to laugh. Just have to laugh because that's absurd.
I was like, you'd rather give aliens credit than Black people.
That's a very good point.
If you Lord, y'all need help.
No, that's how you know, like, you're taking things too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the U.S., like the art, like the architecture, like some of our oldest architecture is Egyptian in design.
Yeah.
You know, like was it the Washington Monument? That's an obelisk. That's an Egyptian structure.
Right.
The city Memphis. That's an Egyptian name. Right, so like there's all these Egyptian influences.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, a lot of African influence.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like, especially on the East Coast, there's like a lot of Egyptian architecture, a lot of Egyptian names, like all kinds of stuff like woven throughout the country. That is kind of hidden. Like they're trying to change history to make it seem like,
and they've succeeded for the most part until now. I feel like recently people are like, let's be honest, like let's show the accurate history. For the longest time, they did hide it, to the point that we believed that they were right and they weren't. I don't know. I just feel like we're like in a Disney Channel movie where like the mean girl is like, like pretending to be like the best, the prettiest and all this stuff, and like putting down like, the actual person who's like to be the protagonist. And like they always hide it. And then at the end they like get exposed for who they are. Right. That's how I feel like. Are we in a movie right now?
That is what's happening actually.
That's a good analogy. I like
I always think of that because like there's so many movies about it. I'm like, this is what white people have done for so long. Like lie to get the power that they get, and then later they get exposed and everyone is like, oh, you're not as great as you made everybody believe. And then they show their true colors and you're like, oh yeah, we don't want that anymore. And it's hard for them to accept it.
Yeah. So how did your BYU experience kind of like play into everything? Like, because obviously BYU is a very unique demographic.
Even unique in Utah. Okay.
Yeah, being 99% LDS and 80% white. So like, what was your experience like at BYU compared to being in Salt Lake?
Yeah, no, it was different. I remember while at BYU, I was like, I don't remember, like, I think the culture in like Utah County is just different. And in BYU itself than like, the rest of the population in Utah, because I did grow up in Salt Lake and, there was still like racism, colorism, all that stuff. But like when I went to BYU, it was like intensified. And it was just so weird to me because I was privileged enough to have grown up Mormon. So like that part wasn't weird for me because I was like, okay, like I already know the church and stuff. I know some people who did not grow up in a Mormon community. So they're like, this is kind of a lot. But when I went to BYU, I was just like, it just felt so like, I don't even know what word to use. Like it was just so isolating, so lonely, so like fake. I always say that. Like I feel like everything was fake. Like the people were fake. Like everybody looked the same. There was no diversity in thought. Not even just like race. Like everybody felt like they thought the same and like expected the same thing from everyone. And when you didn't fit their box, it was like, oh, like why are you here? You should not be here, kind of like thing. And I was shocked by some people who I thought were my friends who would say some very racist things, but like they didn't think they were racist because they're Mormon. Why do Mormon people think that? Because
they believe because they're followers of Christ and they love God and they're Christians. Right. And being a Christian makes you a good person and loving Jesus makes you a good person, that they can't they can't subscribe themselves to like this identity that is just like horrific and it's like on the level of like a Hitler or something. I don't know. That I'm assuming. This is just me guessing what they think, but
Like, because it was just always so crazy to me that they would just say like the most like racist things, the most like homophobic things.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? Could you give like a few examples?
Okay, so like I've had people say like terrible things to me, like especially about like my skin color. Like they'd be like, "Oh yeah, like like a lot of white girls were like intimidated by me because like I was pretty, but like I'm black, so I wasn't a threat to them. Like oh yeah, it's fine, you can hang out with us because ain't nobody gonna want you anyway. And they was right because none of those boys at BYU would want a dark girl because like ew, like And I was just like, so I would get hurtful things like that. I had this one guy who's my best friend at the time, not kidding. And he had a friend that just came home from his mission from Africa. And he's like, oh, my friend is looking for a black girl to date or something. And I was like, okay, like I'm available, like let him know. And he's like, oh, sorry, you're too dark. My best friend said that to me in front of my face. I was with my other friend and we were both like,
good grief.
What? And the way I got so mad, like both me and my friend, who was also light skinned, we both were just like, what? Like, what does that matter? Like, what is that? What does that mean? And like, we just came for him. And immediately you can tell that he wasn't like, he was joking. He wasn't trying to like hurt my feelings when he said it. But to him, it was just something that was just like, duh, like no one's gonna date you because you're dark.
Yeah.
And it just happened to come out. And then he realized like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't have said that.
He said the quiet part out loud.
Exactly. He said the quiet part out. That's what happened to me. And I was just like, okay, so this is what all of you guys think then. Like, makes sense. I'm just like, okay, cool. So like that was a terrible experience, especially because he was my best friend. That's like what really hurt.
Yeah, you're supposed to be above that, right? Like,
right? I'm like, we've been friends for years. I thought that by now you would understand the like, don't say things like that. Like, don't even think things like that. Like, you should know better than that.
You're supposed to call your friend out. Like, come on.
And I'm just like, so like, if you're what really hurt, it's like, if my best friend said this to me, what are other people saying? That was what was like really like eye opener. And I was just like, I'm sick of this. Like, and like some of the things people say, because I work in public health. I study public health. So a lot of public health, sometimes we look at like global health. And, like public health in Africa is not great, because we know why, because systemically Africa was made to stay poor forever, And then some of the things that people would say about like Africans and like how we have like diseases and like AIDS and like all these things was just like, I was just like, how like somebody once said this in my philosophy class. They were like, well, it's okay that Africans, like, Black people are suffering because that's what they sign up for, like in the pre-Earth life. We sign up to be poor because that's the burden or like challenge the trial that we chose to have in this life. And he's like, but it's okay because once, Jesus comes and stuff, like everything will be made okay again. I was like, how dare you say that? Yeah. Like
what?
Are you saying all those people who are suffering in poverty and dying chose that? And he's like, yeah. And the sad thing is he really believed it, like
right.
wholeheartedly.
The first shall be last and the last shall be first. Yeah,
exactly. So he was like, and I can just tell this person has a very privileged life. Cause I was like, you've never had sorrow and suffering, because if you did, you would not think anyone would choose to have that life. Like, like how that was. It's just stuff like that. I was just like, and then, like people said, like I want my sociology class. Our professor had brought up, like another Black person who was shot by the police and like, police brutality. And somebody was like, I just don't believe it. Like, I just don't believe a police person who can just go and just kill somebody. And I was like,
well, it happened. I don't know what to say. Right. Your belief
and exactly. I love the professor because he was very like, who
was it? Sorry, I want to know.
I don't remember his name actually, because it was a while ago. But he answered him like in a very matter of fact, like actually statistics show that police brutality is a thing, and there's a lot of Black people who have been wrongfully killed, convicted, and so forth. And he's like, well, I just don't believe that. And then like, I didn't even know what to say. Like, I was so mad. I was just like, okay, so like I came to BYU. I didn't really want to go to BYU. It just kind of happened. That's a story for another day. So I was like not even happy to be going there. And then I went there and then I was even more mad. Oh, man. Because I was just like, the people here who are getting an education, that's what scared me the most. People who are supposed to be having a college degree, educated people think like this. What are the rest of the population thinking? Because only 33% of people have a college degree. So like, what is the other like 70% of people who don't have a college degree thinking? Like, if people who are getting college degrees think so backwards
and not accepting the data.
And
like
not
he's telling you,
statistics, like it's on the board, and he's like, I just don't believe it. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like what does it make sense?
Yeah. Like these will be government statistics too, like from the FBI's website, and they're just like, oh no, I don't believe it. But
the CDC website or something, right? Yeah, and I'm like, credible sources by a sociology professor who has a PhD in sociology, who's well qualified to be teaching this class at BYU.
Knows more than you, has done way more school than you. Okay?
Right. But like he was like, I just don't believe, like it just doesn't make sense to me. And I was just like, probably doesn't make sense to you because you've never been in a position where you were scared for your life because of your race. So yeah, that's why it doesn't make sense. Like, and you can't see past your own perspective. Again, like the way you're raised shapes your worldview. You're probably raised in a place that has majority of people who look like you, who think like you, who have the same religion as you, and then now you think the rest of the world should be the same way. And when people tell you that's not true, they get mad. Be mad.
Right.
So I know you don't have too much time left, but I wanted to ask, like, what was dating like for you at BYU, and like, did you experience colorism while at BYU? All that? Yeah. Spill the tea.
Yeah. Look, as a fellow Black person, Black woman at BYU, obviously my experience with colorism was a lot different. But I just kidding. I'm like, oh, here we go. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Oh my God! Like, it wasn't even just at BYU, but like BYU intensified it again. Like I experienced it growing up in Utah, where I went to school with a lot of white boys, right? There wasn't like a lot of Black guys, and when they were there, they tried to avoid me.
Heavy on the avoiding you. Heavy on the avoiding
they will turn quick the other way.
They make sure that you are a friend. You are a friend, not a love interest. Sorry.
Yeah, literally. So it was crazy to me because a lot of guys loved me. Like they liked my personality. They liked me. They thought I was pretty and stuff, but could never, ever think of being with someone like me because I'm dark. Like that was just like, it was mind blowing. And it was so annoying because like my friends, like my white friends who I'm just going to say it. Like I was more attracted than them. Like
let them know.
Anybody who like, it's just obvious. Like, you know, like not only just like physically attractive, like I had a better personality. Like I was more like fun. I was outgoing. Like there's just like so much more to me, but like they could not see past that because I'm dark. So like they would never want to date me again. Friend zone real quick. So I was always the friend who guys, they love talking to me. They love like, you know, getting to me and stuff. But then when I thought like, oh, maybe they could like me, maybe it could. No, just don't even think about that because they're going to be like, oh, like, can you help me get this girl? So I was always like in the middle of like helping my friends find guys and stuff to the point that I got to the point that how do I say that? To the point that I started thinking like, you know what? No one's going to date me. So I didn't even try. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even like, I was just like, whatever at that point. So I was not even looking for any love interest. I was just like, I always knew like, if I'm going to find somebody, it's not going to be in Utah. Like, because people are just so like, colorist, racist, like that was it.
Just like I don't know. So part of me just accepted, like in my head I was like, I know getting married and like dating is like something that I should do, and like it's a part of like what should happen, but like that reality never felt true. Exactly. Like even mentally it's like that is a step in life that I should take and I want to take, but like but I don't foresee that actually genuinely happening. So like when it happened, you're like, oh, shocked. I was shocked. Still shocked, but yeah.
No, I feel you. Like I just kind of like didn't really think about it. It was crazy. And then at BYU specifically, again, kind of the same thing happened, but intensified, where like all these guys literally loved me. And it was funny because all the white girls would be like, they would say jokes like, oh, like, yeah, you're so pretty. Like that guy definitely has a crush on you and stuff. And like, they would like say things like that, but they knew that he would never like comfort me. You know what I mean? Like he'll never like ask me out or anything. So like they always loved to have me around because I was like their cool Black friend who's pretty and funny, but like not a threat because no guy will date her. So like she can bring all like the energy, all this great stuff, but at the end of the day, like the guy is still probably gonna choose me over her. And like, and then when they didn't, hey, the way these people be mad. The way these people be mad. Man. Like I even had light-skinned friends and they'd be so shook. It was crazy to me. Like mad when a guy actually did pursue me and they thought like the guy was coming to talk to them and they would swerve them and come to me and they'd be literally genuinely like angry. And I'm like, why do you not want this from me? Like, what? It's like they want me to be like miserable and undesired, like to fit again that like colorist view. And I'm just like, it was really sickening. And then at BYU, what I really like, so annoying was like all the white guys that wanted to date me. You already know they came from Mission from Africa. That's it. Now they love black women because, you know, they spent 2 years in
We're just all laughing because we know the type of person this is. You're just like, sir, this is not the tree you want to be on. Like, I promise you.
Wearing a dashiki and you're just like,
oh you know the sad thing is?
From Amazon, bro.
It's made in Malaysia. Oh, man.
The sad thing is, these guys, the audacity. Like, I'm a pretty girl. Like,
you are. Speak on it. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
I already know that.
Come on.
These guys would be like very unattractive. You'd know, they would know if I was white and like the same person. They wouldn't even come to. They wouldn't even know they had a chance.
Let's talk about it,
right? But because I'm dark, like okay, because she's dark now, like I might have a chance because like nobody else is coming for her.
Yep.
These guys would be but ugly. I'm sorry, very unattractive. Like I'm just like what? I would get offended.
Yes.
I would literally get offended.
I'm gonna date a white man. I'm gonna date the baddest white man in the game. Like, stop playing with me right now.
I would get so offended. I was like, you think you can come talk to me?
Yeah.
And it's not even because I'm like being like, you know, cocky or overconfident, think this. No, it's like genuinely like be real. If I wasn't so dark and I had the same features, the same like level of attractiveness, would you come talk like to me? You probably wouldn't. You'd probably be scared. Because you probably wouldn't think I was in your league. But because I'm dark, all of a sudden that throw away everything else that I bring to the table. Throw it away because she's dark. So now I would be offended. Hey, I was like, sir, take 10 go back. Take 10 steps back. I beg. Like, leave me alone. Like, I'm sorry. Like, and it's just so funny because, and then my friends would do the same thing with like any guy, like really that they knew is not my taste. They knew I would not like. Just because they're like black, like, oh, this black guy, maybe you can date this black. I'm like, that guy is not like, I have nothing in common with them. I don't like them. Like, just because they're black. And then because they're black, they're probably not going to want me anyway. They're trying to stay away.
Look, they're running from their own blackness. They're running from their own blackness.
Oh, they are.
And I am representing more blackness to them.
Yeah.
No.
That's a big issue at BYU, which we need to talk about.
It really is. Like, it was a huge issue.
To that.
Oh, yeah, literally. Like, but like, when I would find black guys outside of BYU, they were better. Like they were more willing to talk to me, like more like, you know, like thought I was beautiful, like naturally, like, and it was very like more genuine. But at BYU, look the other way. It was so like crazy. It got to the point that I literally told myself, I will not find anybody here. So like, I'm not even going to try. Like, and I know dating is a big thing at BYU. Everything revolves around it.
Yeah.
Every activity.
The
like
LDS culture.
Just
like the LDS culture.
So bad and like.
Yeah. Just the influence of that is just. Like, who was I talking to? Like, I was talking to someone the other day and I was realizing like a lot of my friends, like people experience like that marriage of like the people that they care about, you know, at their late 20s and whatnot. But like all of my, like most of the big marriages for my friends happened when I was in my like early 20s.
Oh yeah, 21.
And I'm like, oh wow, I never realized that. Like I just thought about it the other day and I'm like, oh wow, that's different.
Yeah.
And that's because, and so BYU, that experience of, even if you don't want to make dating be important, BYU makes you think dating is important.
No, like it's everything.
Because it's happening all around you.
Well, I think BYU is more concerned about churning out couples than it is about college degrees.
I agree.
Because like they'll withhold your degree in a hot second, but like they want you to get married and have babies like immediately. So
honestly,
I mean, for you to go to a place that is so concerned and like prioritizes like family and family relationships and marriage, like for you to go there and then like in your mind and in your heart tell yourself that you don't have a chance for that, like when that's like the primary goal of BYU, that just tells you like how toxic of a place it can be for people of color.
Oh yeah, it was very. And I would have roommates who'd be like, I haven't gone on a date in 2 weeks. Like, what should I do? And I was just like, don't go on a date. Like, why do you need to? Like, why do you need validation?
Looking at the calendar 4 months, like
not even 4 years. It'd be like a year now.
Guess I should be really sad.
I know. And then that's what I hated, because a lot of like these girls, like non-black girls and stuff, like, you know, they definitely went on dates more than we did, you know, because like they have more of a pool, not because they were more attractive or anything. Just there's more white people and they want white girls, you know. And then they would like like kind of like rubbing my face. Like, it's been 2 weeks since I went on a date. When was the last time you went on a date? Bitch, you already know when it's like sorry.
No, it's so true. No, but that's so
they're doing it on purpose.
Real.
I'm like, you already know. Like, I haven't been
pump themselves up to make
exactly.
Feel better,
to be like, well, you know, like inside their head, like they're probably like, oh, I'm better than you. So like at least I'm getting more dates than you. And it was just so cringy. I was just to the point that I'm just like, I'm still prettier than you, like whatever. Like you know that too.
And like for me, if I ever would complain about it, or talk about it, white women love to say to me, well, everyone struggles in those ways. Like these are things that other people and for me it's just always like, no, you don't get that. At the end of the day, like I have a level of blackness that is impacting like the way I'm viewed, my attractiveness, desirability, like all these things are impacting like my dating opportunities and experiences, and you're not acknowledging that. You're just like, this is a struggle for everyone, and just like invalidating how your blackness is playing a major role in your ability to date more, or whatever the case, and that even will come from black men too for me. But again, another episode to talk about that.
Honestly, like that's a whole nother episode, because I feel like black men are like literally the most colorist, and like it was sad. Like
sadly, I'll have to agree with that.
I have heard them like oh, like they'll be like, oh, like, oh, you like black blue, like you're like so dark, like they like shout things at me like when I'm walking down the street or something. I'm like, that's unnecessary. Like, why? You know? Or they'd be like, yeah, you're pretty, but like I literally have had guys like tell me straight to my face, I only like white girls, and I mean like black guys. Like, why? Like, I never understood. Like, okay, like, and they're like trying to make it a preference. It's not a preference. You just want to be like more accepted.
That's
like
internalized racism. It's not a preference.
Yeah, it's not a preference. Like I'm like, no. And then like the white girls that they get, I'm like, hooey, keep them.
No,
let's talk
for me. Look, again, another episode. It's
keep them.
What I'm getting from this is that we need to have a panel of just all women talking about their experiences dating at BYU.
My gosh.
Well, because
just boot me out of here.
Look,
just talk about it.
I'm gonna leave it off of this. The mediocre level of like attractiveness, personality, ambitions, everything that a white woman can have, and a black man will bend over backwards for her, but they will not dare. Like, why can't I just be an average black woman?
Right.
Let me just be an average black woman, like average attractiveness, average, but let me just be average.
Right.
And for that, like white women, at least from black men, I don't know about the experience with other white people. I'm not speaking on that. That's fine. It's engaged. They're so infatuated with them.
Right.
But for a black woman, they have to be the best of the best. Top tier.
Oh my gosh.
You have to be like, they want black women that are, in terms of attractiveness of women, right? Like these are the top 1% of women that you can't even get. Let's be honest here. You want the top 1% level of attractiveness of women that is not even in your league, but that's who you will settle for if you are with a black woman.
Right.
And so the rest of us who are average people, we don't fit that criteria. And that was just that was always mind-blowing to me, and seeing like there's other black women that are just as average as these white girls you're going after, but you don't want to go. Right. I'm confused. That was always confusing to me. Very confusing.
Because I feel like the whiteness overpowers everything. I was like, oh yeah, she's not great. She's not that pretty. She's not that funny. She's not that smart. But you know what? She's white, so they feel like they won something. Like it's cringy.
And you know, the thing that's interesting is that this doesn't. It's not just. I mean, dating and relationships is huge. That's very important, but it spreads into everything else too. When it comes to like black women are the most entrepreneurial, meaning like they have more businesses and you know are more like they tend to be more more black women are entrepreneurs than any other group
and most
in the
degrees.
United States. And then they're also the most educated out of any group in the United States. But then also like statistically the most disrespected, the most pushed aside.
They humble us so quick.
Yeah, like you know, there's all the missing black and brown women, you know, who are not, their experiences are not really investigated or not really acknowledged. You've got the differences in pay, where black women are paid the least out of everyone, although they're the most educated, which is you know, just all those things. It spills over into so many things, and like there's so many things. This is a whole
so
other
complex.
episode.
It really is so complex, and like our experiences just show like little bits of like a bigger problem. Let's just, sometimes it's really like, it's like kind of just like disappointing, or what's the word when you just don't have hope? Like I just sometimes
hopeless.
I just feel like hopeless. Like I just feel like will things for my daughter get better? Because I have like a 1-year-old, soon to be 1-year-old. I'm like, by the time she's my age, like, will her experience be different? Will she be more valued? Because like you said, like we have to be extraordinary. And like, God forbid, when we are extraordinary and we say that we are, they humble us real quick. The amount of people who will be so quick to humble me because I have a lot of confidence. I know my like strength. I know I'm pretty. I know I'm smart. I know like I know all these things. And I'm like, and like if I was white, you wouldn't be so quick to be like, oh, calm down, like you're doing too much, you know? But like for me, like sometimes I feel like I have to, because people always ask me like, oh, like why are you so confident? I'm like, sometimes I have to be, because there's not a lot of people who see very confident dark-skinned girls. Everybody wants us to be miserable, sad, talk about how our life sucks because we're dark. And then when they see somebody who's the opposite, who's like, no, I'm dark, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, like I'm doing great things, they are so quick to be like, well, you need to calm down. You need to be more humble. Like, you're doing too much. You're not that pretty. You're not that. I'm like, you know what? I'm better than the average person. And to like, for a white girl who would have the same strength that I have, they would be phenomenal, extraordinary. But for me, it's just like, I'm another, black, dark-skinned girl. So like, yes, sometimes I feel like the need to be confident because it like gives other girls confidence too. Like, okay, like, because I get that a lot. Everywhere I go, like not just in Utah, I've gone to other states and there's a lot of black people and we're just like, okay, girl, like you have so much confidence. We love that for you. Like I'm walking with my head up. Like, yes, I know I'm dark. I'm wearing my skin. Like it doesn't bother me. And people want me to be sad. Like, I don't know. Why do they want that? They want me to just like, like be sad about being dark. Wish I was not dark, but I like love that I'm dark. I love my skin and people don't like that I love it. Blows my mind. Like, why? White girls love that they're white. Why can't we love being black? Like, right?
So true.
Yes, indeed.
They love their blonde hair. Why can't I love my afro hair? Like, come on, people. Like, let's stop doing that to black women. Like, just let us be us.
Yeah.
Without always getting pushback for just existing. Like, let us exist, please.
I think people fear subconsciously, just like a group that, the black women have such a force of nature and are really change makers in our own communities, and we're responsible for a lot of advancements in our own community with the civil rights movement and whatnot. I just think that sometimes people fear when certain groups know how powerful they are and are aware of it and use that just based on the racism that the black communities experience. Like black women have led families now since the 70s with mass incarceration, with the different things like that. And so I think that that's a bit scary for people to think about what black women would really do if we were into our power and ability to influence even more than we already are, which I feel like we really are. And we make things happen still, but if we were really more unapologetic about it, I can't imagine. I understand the fear. Yeah, we're great. So
love it. Yeah. So one last question to wrap up. With all of those things that you've experienced, with the colorism, with the anti-blackness, what are some things that you do maybe that you could kind of offer as advice, just for self-care and like to promote confidence within yourself? What advice would you give to other black women?
Yeah, that's a good question because I do get that a lot. And part of it, I think I'm just grateful that I was born with a personality that I'm very confident and outgoing and like have always loved myself, because that's the hardest part. But I know a lot of people who are not in the same shoes as me. But one thing, like whenever when I was younger, had felt different or did not like my blackness because I was getting made fun of or being called dark, I always think about all my family members and like how beautiful they are. And I'm just like, why would I not? Like, how can I do that to them? Like, how can I think so low of myself when I love my mom? She's beautiful. I love my aunts. They're beautiful. My cousins, and I'm just like, so why would I let other people bring down me and my family and my ancestors with the beautiful qualities that we have? Because like hating myself is like hating them. And then that changes me. So it's not about me now. It's about all of us. Like, it's about my whole family. It's about my ancestry. So it always helps me. And also just surrounding yourself with other people who love you and your blackness. That made a big difference. Like when my group of friends changed to be more diverse, of people who had similar experiences as me, that helped me see like, okay, I'm not the only one. There's other people like me going through the same like experiences. And honestly, things like this, like the Black Menace podcast, like when you hear other people's stories and then sometimes when people explain phenomenons that you have seen, but you didn't know like how to put them into words, and somebody says it, you're like, that's what I went through. Like, that's what I felt. Like, okay, now, like, it's real. It's not just in my head. Like, that's something I'm going through. Like, those kind of things really help. I do a lot of reading on like African history and Black history, just like see how powerful, like Rachel just said, we are and like all that we've done. And that like motivates me, like, you know what? No, I do love myself and stuff. And yeah, just like obviously taking care of yourself, doing other things like that. But for me, the biggest thing that has helped me love me and my Blackness is knowledge. Accurate history, context that shows that Blackness is actually powerful and has been diminished for a reason. That's what's giving me the most confidence, because I was like, none of what we see out here is real about Black people. Like, about anti-Blackness, it's not real. It was made up by people who feared it so much. And that gets me the most confident. And I'm like, oh yes, thank God I'm Black, and I'm gonna stay this Black forever. My kids are gonna be Black.
Amen.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. This was fun.
For being your voice. Yeah, we're super grateful to have you and just to hear your experience and give some validation to that. And I definitely wanted to see a panel come through. Just like,
oh my gosh.
We can do different ethnicities too. Like we can have one for Latino women to talk about their experience, and then Black women talk about theirs. And maybe if we can find some Indigenous women to talk about theirs.
Yeah, that's
I think that would be really, really important. But
yeah, and I my dream would be to have a panel of some Black men to just come forward and to have some honest conversation.
Honestly.
And I know some Black men who I've had honest conversations with who have admitted their colorism.
Oh yeah.
And will say, yeah, I was like this, or I did think this. And them, being able to come forward, and again, maybe Black women are not the ones to be in the room for that, but coming together and admitting like it's not your fault, some of the things, right? Like your role is to just identify and change, not to continue to perpetuate. So that could be a good thing too, to see some Black men coming together and having their own discord about it.
Yeah, I can put that together for
and
sure.
I just wanted to say, I just remind me of something that I had it with my brothers. So I have 4 brothers, right? My 2 younger brothers. My youngest brother, I remember in high school when he said this comment, and I was just like, oh my gosh, here comes another colorist man. I had to check
my brother too, don't worry.
No, I had to check, and now he's great. But like, he said this, he's like, when he was in high school, he's like, well, I'm gonna marry a white girl so that my kids can be mixed, because those are the most beautiful kids or something. And I was just like, okay, so we have a bunch of little cousins, a bunch of them that we all love. So I was like, oh, okay, so our little cousin, is he not cute? And he's like, no, I love Adhieu. He's so cute. He's so beautiful. I'm like, okay, what about this little cousin? Are they not cute? He's like, no, like they're gorgeous. Like I love them. And I was like, so why would you think that? And I saw it like click for him. He was just like, what am I thinking? Like, and like we're like exceptionally dark-skinned people who are still beautiful. And like he just had to get that like check, because he was hanging around a lot of people who did not see the beauty in Blackness, who were not around Blackness often. And he's, probably the media affected him. And I remember when that clicked for him, till this day, never hear him say anything.
Yes.
And I'm just like, and he's like, yeah, you're right. And I just like, I wish more people can just like, I don't know, like have that click, that light bulb that's just like, this is not real. Like you're just in your head and other people are in your head. So I would love to see like Black men talk, because I always confront them.
Me too.
Real quick.
Someone can, anyway, I have so much more I can say. Someone tried to come for me through an anonymous question because of how much I come for Black men and dating white girls. When I dated a white man, someone tried to come for me. And like, I don't know if you remember that, Nate, last year on my Instagram, and they like came for me. And I think they said something about Taylor too. Anyway, it was just,
Right, like,
you can say more later.
Business,
but whenever you call them out, they're like, well, you can't. I'm like, it's different for me. I promise. I'm being honest here. But,
we need to talk about color. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get together a panel of Black men. We're gonna talk about colorism and sexism in the Black community, because that's an important topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Snaps. Okay. Cool. And we'll forego our recommendations for this week just so that Adhieu can get out of here. But thank you so much for staying extra. Sorry.
I was gonna say the recommendation is to listen to the podcast. But
yes.
Oh yes, please.
But yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much. And we'll catch y'all later.
Peace.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so we're done now.